What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode here, the Desai Guys Football Forum. I'm one of your co-hosts over the side, joined as always by my good friend, my good buddy, the other half of Desai Guys, Mr. Ted Desai. And Ted, nice hat.
Thank you.
I
appreciate
what's
that.
Going on right now.
It was a very stressful weekend, but it worked out in the end.
To say the least, yes.
Oh my God, fucking Derek White, hate you. But you know what, Boston, you can, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, politely go suck it.
Yeah, I think after that ending on Saturday, Game 6, I just thought, all the momentum is gone. There's no way Miami's climbing back for that. But then you get a trademark Boston no-show-up sort of game in Game 7. That's how you're able to cruise into the finals.
That was the best part. Not the fact that, we beat them in Game 7. That was great. But the fact that we just smashed them. And I was right there with you. Murray, I texted you right after Game 6. That broke me. It legitimately did break me. And you go, okay, but how are you feeling about Monday? I'm like, we're going to lose. We're screwed. I had no hope. And that is why I both love and hate this Miami Heat team. Because it's just guys, I can only do this so often. Can we just sweep Denver, please? Just give me a break.
Yeah, I
don't
think
dare.
Don't.
I thought you were going to say they're going to sweep you. And I was
No, I don't think they're going to sweep them. Miami's showing enough fight that I think they'll get a game, possibly two. But from what I've seen with Denver, it's just they're unstoppable. But yeah, that's why they say you have to play the games. It's different when you're looking at it on paper. So, yeah, I'm excited. Should be a good matchup. But
Heat in 7.
Hopefully, that'd be very nice for you. But yeah, I'm just hoping for some good games. But yeah, I'm sorry, buddy, but I am pulling for Denver. I like to see them win their first title. I like to see them win their first title.
The betrayal! How dare you?
Yeah. Nah. That's what I'm thinking.
You know what? I hope Brock Purdy tears his UCLA.
Wow.
UCL.
That's almost as bad as Spotty Good Spots.
That's not nearly as bad as good.
Pretty close.
Good spots.
Pretty
UCL
close.
Is that what he tore?
Yeah, it says UCL.
Yeah, you know what? No, sorry, Brock Purdy, but he brought this evil on you.
So you stumbled it, so it's probably not even going to happen now.
I got an email right as I came in. I realized I forgot to close out my email, and it's just we need to stop doing this so late.
Gosh. But yes, let's transition into football here instead of the NBA. But yeah, it should be exciting for the NBA finals to start on Thursday, June 1st between the Heat and the Nuggets. But Ted, especially with June coming up now, we are sort of transitioning fully now back into fantasy football. I know we still got a lot of off-season content with the summer here, so I mean, we may not be diving super hard into fantasy football just yet, but we're going to be sprinkling in a lot more fantasy-centric episodes, like today's episode and later this week's episode. We're going to be talking about guys that we're in on, we're buying, we're just completely in. We just like with their situations, even if they had a bad season last year. And then later in the week, we're going to be doing players that we're just not sold on. We're not really interested. We're not buying what they're giving out there. Players like, your Jamal Williams who scored 17 touchdowns. Is that somebody that we're liking? Is that something that we're not liking? These are the types of players we're going to be talking in these two episodes this week. So today we're talking about guys that we are buying. So 100% these are guys that we like. All in. Yes, push it all in. Exactly there.
So you're a vertical pusher. I'm more of a horizontal pusher.
Yeah, I know. You're you got a pretty wide chip stack. Well, but you're going like this.
Because I win so often.
Yeah, I don't believe that at all.
Hey, I made the semifinals in the one league I cared about last year.
Oh, you're talking about fantasy football. I'm talking about poker. I was like, poker, I don't know.
Poker, I'm way too reckless. Shocker,
yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. I was like, fantasy football, I will give you. Yes,
I always think the other player's bluffing, and I'm just like, really? Pair of queens, huh? What do you have? A 2 and a 3?
Yeah, exactly. So fantasy football give you poker and not so much, my friend. But yeah, these are guys that we're buying. So like I was sort of alluding to earlier, these are guys that just maybe had bad seasons last year. They were injured majority of the season. Maybe they just had a poor season, whatever it is. these are guys that were sort of buying as far as like, heading into 2023, they landed in good situations. Maybe there's a change up in scheme. Maybe there's just like, it was a down year. You put it as an anomaly, but they're going to bounce back here in 2023. So these are guys that were buying in today's episode. So Tad, who's a guy that you think is just, regardless of what everybody's thinking about him, he's going to be an absolute stud coming the 2023 fantasy season?
So this guy he doesn't have this title quite yet, but he is very much in the running for this title. And that title is my favorite sleeper heading into next year's draft.
Oh, okay.
It is Khalil Herbert with the Chicago Bears. Now,
I do like me some Herbert. I do like me some Khalil
Herbert. Yes, you do. And you call this, props to you. You call this. This was a way better take than your stupid Kenneth Walker take. But stupid's harsh. I'm sorry. Stupid was too harsh of a word. Misguided. But anyway,
I don't even feel it's misguided. I think I hit on all the rookies that I like there.
On it because Rashad Penny got hurt. How many times do we have to have
It doesn't matter, though. It told you.
Matter. It absolutely does matter.
Him, Tyler Algier, and of course Khalil Herbert too.
It's funny you should say that, actually. What was it? One of my coworkers, not the one I've spoken about in the past, came to me today while I was like, cleaning up my classroom. And the funny thing was, he was like, kind of sheepishly like, are you, I don't want to bug you. Can I ask you for some fantasy advice? I told him at the end of the conversation, I'm like, that's literally my second job. You can always do that. And he goes, Tyler Algier for Javonte Williams, straight up. He's getting Javonte Williams. Can I make that happen? And I very gently had to be like, I would include another player if I were you. But despite the point, Khalil Herbert, a player you did call, you're actually missing an excuse for why they might not have done so well last season, and that is because of just their general playing situation, the guys they were surrounded with, whether that be a coordinator or some teammates. And with Herbert, it was the teammates. It was the fact that David Montgomery, who I am still a believer in, I think David Montgomery, before they they being the Detroit Lions, drafted Gibbs with the 12th overall pick.
Yep, number 12.
There we go, nailed it. I honestly, David Montgomery actually probably would have been my pick here, but because of all that situation going on, I looked at the Bears depth chart while doing research for this episode. Bears really didn't do much to fix Montgomery's absence now, and I take that as a big, sign of faith in Herbert. It makes sense because I remember, get this, and yes, I personally looked these stats up, but when Herbert gets over 50%, if I had the time, I would have. Get ready for more of these stats.
You're on summer vacation, bro. You have nothing but time.
I am 6 hours into summer vacation. How fast do you think I do research? Yeah. But when Herbert gets over 50% of the touches in the Bears offense, he averages 115 total yards. And on top of that, he has never gone below an average of 75 yards.
That's not bad.
That's insane.
That's not bad at all, yeah.
That's crazy.
I like it.
So he's uber productive. And then this is what shocked me the most. This I actually did look up myself. I go, well, because I vaguely remember him having a really good hot streak last season. I'm like, let's look up when that hot streak was. Because my memory, which is well documented as not being the best, and this is another good example of that.
That's putting it mildly.
Ooh, yeah. This is a great example of this, is I was like, oh, I remember him closing out the season really, really well. He closed out the season really, really poorly. Like, he really did not do so high. But it's funny because that actually backs up the stat I shared earlier, because the most carries he got, not touches granted, but carries over the last 5 games, 10. So they just weren't feeding him enough of the ball. So I think with him in being the lead back in the Bears offense, I know for those of you who aren't Bears fans are going, well, what did they do to fix David Montgomery's absence? They signed D'Onta Foreman. And look, nothing against D'Onta Foreman. He did really, really well with Carolina, really stepped up along with Chuba Hubbard after they traded Christian McCaffrey. I don't think he's really geared up to, I don't see him as that much of a threat to Khalil Herbert's touches. So, Amir, I actually have a comparison, and I mean this both in terms of scheme and in terms of fantasy output. I would be interested to hear your thoughts on this. The way I see this tandem working is, and this could be frustrating for both managers, should one of these guys be on your team. I honestly see this as an almost exact replica of Zeke Elliott and Tony Pollard from last year, where Tony Pollard racks up the yards, and that's where he gets, or Tony Pollard being Khalil Herbert, racks up the yards, that's where he gets you most of the points. And like, hopefully he goes for, as I pointed out, 70 to, 115. So he gets you those 7 to 11 points. And plus, if you're in PPR, the extra couple. And then D'Onta Foreman's going to get all the touchdowns. He's going to get like 400 yards, but he's going to get all the touchdowns. And so I think both have fantasy value, but I really, because don't forget, Pollard was, for a good stretch there, one of the most valuable fantasy running. That's part of the reason I made the semifinals in my league last year, was because I had Tony Pollard during his hot streak, and he was always dependable for no less than 12 points. Which I know people tend to forget, like, oh no, my fantasy running back 2 always needs to go over 12 points. Yeah, they do, but very rarely do they consistently do that. That's how you get into running back 1 territory. And so I think Khalil Herbert is, because of his very rough stretch late in the draft or late in the season, he's going to slip in drafts when he should be drafted in the mid rounds as a potential RB2 and a definite flex option. But I think a lot of people are going to see him more as a bench option, which is a weakness that you can exploit. So I'm do the horizontal push here. I'm all in on Khalil Herbert as the running back sleeper of the year.
I do like Khalil Herbert. As soon as David Montgomery was, signing with Detroit, like there's a lot of rumors circulating that he wasn't going to return to Chicago. It's like, as soon as I saw that, I was like, okay, Khalil Herbert just looked like the younger running back in that backfield. He looked a lot more consistent with the touches that he was given in Chicago. So as soon as I saw officially that David Montgomery signed to Detroit, I was like, I am also very much all in on Khalil Herbert. Now, the only thing that sort of worries me is that, yes, D'Onta Foreman was a very capable running back in Carolina, and he did produce, obviously, for them down the stretch when they did trade Christian McCaffrey, him and Chuba Hubbard. The other running back that worries me a little bit more, though, is their 4th-round running back out of the University of Texas, Roschon Johnson. So,
I'm not that worried about him.
I'm not super worried yet, but I think there's a reason why they drafted him in the 4th. But I think eventually he's going to ease himself to get more touches in that backfield. So then now you got a trifecta in the backfield. So I still like Khalil Herbert to get all the lead touches and mainly the rushes. I'd say he's not as much of a weapon in the passing game. So I think that's where Foreman, possibly Roschon Johnson, can sort of fill in there. But I 100% think Herbert's going to get all of the rushing touches in that backfield. But I think slowly but surely, I think Roschon Johnson is going to usurp the secondary role from D'Onta Foreman. He may become like a veteran cut maybe next season, maybe the season after, what have you. But that 2-headed monster between Johnson and Herbert, that could be very lethal. So that's the only thing that worries me a little bit more compared to D'Onta Foreman, that Roschon Johnson can potentially steal some red zone touches, goal line touchdowns that way. But I still very much like Khalil Herbert. Like, I very much value him as an RB2 on my roster.
That's interesting, because that's actually something I did not consider when I was taking my notes. I went to most of my leagues, which are year-by-year leagues.
Sure.
So year-by-year, I disagree with you. I don't think Roschon's going to really touch on or invade on Herbert's production that much. But if you're in a dynasty league, I am much lower on Herbert. I 100% agree. I don't see Herbert as the long-term option at running back, but I see him having a really good year this year. Now, if you were saying slowly but surely this season, well, then we're just at an impasse, which has never happened on this show. And so I don't think the rookie is going to make that big of an impact later on this season. But you've been supposedly right on rookie running backs before. And you know what's going to happen? God damn it. We just etched this into stone because of karma. Herbert's going to get hurt, and then you're going to be like, I told you so in week 14.
No, I haven't said anything yet. I haven't said anything yet.
But if I'm in a dynasty league, I'm not as high on Herbert.
But I think heading into 2023, I like Herbert the most out of all the Chicago Bears running backs. And I think like I said, from what I saw last season, I just saw he looked a lot more fluid compared to David Montgomery. I think they want to give him more touches.
More comfortable fit in there.
Exactly.
Which is why I share that stat of like when he just gets more touches, when he's given the opportunity, he succeeds. And it seems like last year they're like, well, I felt like that was, I know coaches don't actually do this, but I felt like that was almost like the front office kind of impeding on the coaching there, being like, push David a little bit. Let's see if he's worth the money. And now that Montgomery's gone, now they're just like, all right, now we can actually go with the guy we want. It's like my favorite movie, Moneyball, with Carlos Pena. Of like, well, now I want to see what Pena's got. And finally, they were just like, get him off the roster so they don't have a choice anymore.
Exactly. So I'm very much high on Herbert as well. I think he's going to be a guy that I'm be targeting, towards those middle rounds to be my supplemental running back. Or like you said, very good flex option as well.
Perfect 4th round pick.
Exactly. So Tad, I'm going to go from one Herbert to another Herbert, and I'm going to go to Los Angeles Chargers with quarterback Justin Herbert. So now I know we sort of talked about this. We prefaced the episode by saying these are guys that probably had, bad seasons or injury plagued seasons or just, needed a bounce back season. Well, Herbert's been stellar all 3 seasons. So it's nothing in a case like that. I think it's more just I'm buying more with Justin Herbert this season is because Tad, he finished as a quarterback 11 in PPR leagues last season with 281.26 fantasy points. So he was on the fringe of being a top 10 fantasy quarterback, right? I don't think anybody expected Geno Smith to finish in the top 5. I think that probably pushed him out, obviously. So I don't think that's going to happen this year, but we'll probably talk about that a little bit later on down the road here as the summer goes on. But I want to talk about Herbert because, like I said, outside of last season, he finished inside the top 10 the previous 2 seasons, including Tad, a 2nd place finish in 2021. So this guy has to bring
this up with you. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
So if you finish that high, can you be a breakout candidate?
Well, like I said, so because he had a down year last year, that's why I'm sort of
bounce back. Okay, not breakout, bounce back.
Yeah, so that's why I said that's a guy that I'm buying in this year because a lot of people are seeing that's okay, Joe Lombardi is fired. They're switching over to Kellen Moore. I know most people are high on Kellen Moore, so it's not really going against the grade there where it's just okay, can he sort of make that transition with the new offensive coordinator? I think 100% this is a match made in heaven. I mean, we talked about Kellen Moore before, Tad, but I'm going to speak about this again, more to fantasy context now. So in the 4 years that Kellen Moore's offensive coordinator in Dallas, Tad, Dak Prescott had the following finishes in PPR leagues. 2019, 2nd. 2020, 30th, but he also only played.
That was when he broke his ankle. That was when I was looking up Dak's stats earlier today to help you out here, and I was like, "What happened there?" I'm like, "Oh, that's when your ankle."
That's the season he got hurt. He only played in 5 games that year. 2021 finished 7th. And then last year, he finished 19th because he missed 5 games. But Tad, I'm going to add on to this because with the exception of 2022, Prescott averaged at least 20 fantasy points per game in all 3 of those seasons from 2019 to 2021. So you look at that, you transition it into this Chargers offense that I think has, if not the same amount of weapons that Dallas has, maybe a few more. And you look at what Kellen Moore can do with this offense as far as unlocking it and just giving more to Justin Herbert to sort of, make him the focal point of the offense. There's a reason he's been so successful in these first 3 seasons and people are talking about him being that next elite quarterback in the NFL sort of thing, So it's I see what what he's going to bring as far as getting Justin Herbert just to unlock just that extra level. It's we already see Justin Herbert being so good, but it's just adding Kellen Moore, I think it's just going to take him to another level. So that's why when I'm seeing him finish as QB 11 last season, I automatically think he's going to finish at least top 5, if not top 3 this coming season.
So for our YouTube audience, they're probably like, oh, here comes Tad with the hot take because of the face I was making when you were like, maybe they do have a few more weapons. And for our podcast audience, I was making a face when you said that.
It's true.
That face was not, no, they don't. That face was, of course they do.
Of course.
Of course they do. I mean, you think about just how much, and
it's not Quentin Johnston bias, is it?
No comment. So they're, and this is something I've said 1,000 times on the show, so I won't spend too much longer in saying.
Is it Darius Davis bias?
What? Would you just let me get to my point?
You interrupt me all the time. You need to
I know. That's my role. You know your role. Sit there and be interrupted. But it's the fact, I think what makes Kellen Moore such a strong coordinator, and for loyal listeners, they're going to go, okay, here we go again. But yes, here we go again, is the fact that he can identify the specific strengths of players, even younger ones, and, pull the most out of that strength in the system. And what I mean by that is Quinn Johnson's more of an athletic possession receiver. So he's honestly, in my opinion, probably going to play more of the inside role that I think people are expecting, just because I feel like that's an easier role to play than go outside where you could potentially face number 2 corner. And then with Darius Davis, you have a guy that can stretch the field. With Jalen Guyton, see, it's not just TCU, guys. With Jalen Guyton, you have yet another good slot speedster. So if you do want to play QJ on the outside, great. Then you have Guyton and Darius to be kind of your every. This is such a diverse offense. I haven't even touched on the running backs yet. So this is an offense ripe for just so much diversity in the play calling and the play style that I think that Justin Herbert is absolutely primed for a breakout. And it was funny. So like I said, I was looking up Dak Prescott's stats, and this is usually something a lot of fantasy owners go, that's not great for your value. But remind me of that stat. So last year he averaged how many points a game, Dak?
So last year was below 20 points per game. I think it was around 16 or something.
It was the year before that,
previous 3 seasons with Kellen Moore's offensive career, at least 20 fantasy points per game.
So I was expecting, because I did, I knew obviously that Dak, his fantasy value skyrocketed. I think that's a fair word. When Kellen Moore took over. So naturally I was like, well, he's probably running it more. And I looked up, no, Dak's rushing touchdown numbers actually plummeted.
They did.
He went from like 7 or 8 his rookie year to 6 the next year. And then 3 the past 3 years, which, by the way, like extraordinary consistency. Even when you break your ankle, you still get 3 rushing touchdowns. But anyway, so that shows you how good this passing offense is, though. The fact that he can produce like that. And honestly, Justin Herbert's better than Dak Prescott. Not that hot of a take. So the fact that he could do that with Dak Prescott with less weapons, I can't wait to see what he does with Justin Herbert here. I feel, honestly, Justin Herbert is, I'm trying to think. Who was the last quarterback to really shock people, jump to number 1 or jump in the top 5? Was it Trevor Lawrence? Did he finish in the top 5 last year?
No, I think he was pretty close, though.
He was close.
He had a pretty good
Trevor
season,
Lawrence, Matt Stafford. I know it wasn't really a surprise, but Stafford's jump from his first year with the Rams, from the Lions to the Rams, that was a massive jump.
I think Matt Ryan's MVP year 2016, I don't think a lot of people expected that one.
That's a great example.
Shot up because of Kyle Shanahan, right? So it's like, I think that's a big one.
I mean, fuck, that's what got Kyle Shanahan the job. So yeah, no, I'm Justin Herbert being the jump quarterback of this year, like almost virtual lock in my opinion.
Man, real quick, I'm so glad we hired Kyle Shanahan instead of Josh McDaniels that year. They were 2 in the running for that San Francisco job, and I was like, oh, God.
That's why people judged me. They were like, you must be so mad when Josh McDaniels turned his back on the Colts. I'm like, no, I am not. even look, those Frank Reich years were not great, but they are still not nearly as rough as I'm sure the Josh McDaniels years would have been.
Indeed. But yeah, 100%.
Tom Brady is totally going to be the Raiders quarterback at some point this year, isn't he?
He's going to pull a Jackie Moon, and he's going to be
exactly. No, that's exactly. I'm telling you, I'm calling it right now. You guys heard it here first.
Oh gosh, I love it. I'd actually be kind of interested to see that if he does pull a Jackie Moon.
I would love that so much, because apparently that's what he was going to do with the Dolphins.
Yeah.
It's just now he's doing it in Vegas.
True.
Vegas, Miami, recently divorced. This is not going to end well.
Yeah. But I think clearly, Tad, I think we're both high on
Gronk's
players.
Coming back too.
We're both high on players named Herbert. So, I mean, I think that any other Herberts that you could think of that we were high on here?
Bill Herbert? That sounds like a Herbert name. That would be a great tackle name. Bill Herbert.
Bill Herbert. Okay. Well, let's move on.
Oh, and his nickname would be Big Bill Herbert. He's like this massive Herbert. Left tackle. Oh, that'd be great.
Your next Madden creative player, is that what you're going to do now?
Maybe.
Well, let's move on to players not named Herbert here, Tad. So give me another guy that you're pretty high on, that you're buying for the 2023 season.
So I'm buying this guy not to be like a superstar, but I think he's going to be a solid starter that honestly is probably going to go undrafted in a fair amount of leagues. I think he'll get drafted in about half. I see like a 50-50 split between draft and undrafted, so he could be a key waiver wire pickup very early in the season. Jake Ferguson, the tight end for Dallas. Now that Dalton Schultz is in Houston, bad move, buddy. Bad move. But now that he's gone, I think part of the reason that Dallas let him walk is because Jake Ferguson, well, he didn't do a whole lot. He had 400 yards receiving and a couple of receptions during his rookie year. He did average almost 10 yards a catch. So you saw the flashes of athleticism there. But I think even with Kellen Moore gone, that as we were talking about with just the seemingly depletion of weapons in the Cowboys offense, Dak is having fewer options, and he does love his tight ends. And proof is in the pudding, that is the saying, right?
Yeah, surprisingly.
Oh, thank Christ. I was so worried about that when I put that in my notes. Dalton Schultz finished the last 2 years as a top 12 tight end. And I know what you guys are saying. Top 12. Yeah. Okay. Congratulations. Slow clap for Dalton Schultz. But honestly, that tight end, and we've said this ever since we've started this podcast, tight end is probably the most volatile fantasy position that there is. And so
if I have
a guy that's finishing in the top 12 2 years in a row, I'm trusting that guy or I'm trusting that system. So the question is, do you trust the guy? Do you trust the system? I'm going system here, and I'm also going quarterback. I think that Dak Prescott knows, like, okay, the tight end is always my safety blanket. Will Jake Ferguson blow you away with, 15 points a game, Travis Kelce style? No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying he's a sleeper. But what I am saying is, if you are the type to draft a backup tight end with potential starting, starter growth, I think Jake Ferguson's perfect for the role. And I know. I can already hear literally outside my apartment right now. I hear people yelling at me, Schoonmaker. Okay. Let's break down Luke Schoonmaker here for a second.
They were in the pool. They're shouting up from you at the bottom level.
It's funny. There's some by the pool. There's some by the street. And I believe there's one in the apartment above me. I don't know how they got in here. I need to talk to my complex about that security. Yeah. No, I thought they were tight security here. But yeah, I know. Schoonmaker. I'm getting to it. But anyway, so yes, he is talented. I love all of his physical gifts. But here's why I was shocked that Luke Schoonmaker, the tight end out of Michigan, went to Dallas in the second round. The reason I didn't have him as high in my rankings is because Michigan, for better or for worse, did not utilize him properly. They use him primarily as a blocker. Over under 50 catches for Schoonmaker last season at Michigan.
Probably under.
Way under. He had 35.
I wouldn't say that's way under, but
that's way under. Dude, 35 catches.
Way under is like 20.
35 catches for a second round tight end.
No, I get you. Yeah. No.
So I think Schoonmaker will be good eventually, but I think it's going to take him a little bit longer to adapt to being like the receiving type tight end that really succeeds in the NFL than people are really giving him credit for. He could prove me wrong. He's a Michigan guy. I hope he does. But I think that Ferguson has a at least solid 8 to 10 week foothold of like, I am the tight end in Dallas. So I honestly like Ferguson for, 5 to 8 touchdowns, which I'll take that for a tight end.
5 to 8 touchdowns.
5 to 8 touchdowns.
That's prognosticating pretty high there, I'd say. I want to believe. I do. With everything that you said.
Was this the Matrix? I want to believe.
A little bit. But the thing that's always slowing me down is just Mike McCarthy's calling the plays in Dallas now. And
I have some stats to back that up. Keep going. Keep going with your point.
I think the big thing for me is just I see what we saw with Kellen Moore. And like you said, this Dallas offense has sort of been losing some weapons there. He's sort of been dealt some lemons there. But you know what? He's been able to make lemonade when he was there, if not lemon meringue pies with the lemons that he was given here. But now what I'm seeing here with Mike McCarthy and the same lemons that he's going to be dealt, I think the same lemons that he's going to be dealt, it's going to be like water with a hint of lemon. It's like when you go to a fancy restaurant, they give you the water, they give you the slice of lemon on the glass. That's what you're going to get for this offense. That's sort of why I'm sort of worried about some of these offensive weapons in the passing offense. I think I still have a little bit more faith in Tony Pollard. They do have a good offensive line semblance to sort of establish a good running game. So I like Tony Pollard, but just the passing game worries me a little bit. So it's like your CD Lambs, they acquired Brandon Cooks. You're mentioning Jake Ferguson, obviously. It's just
Jake Ferguson was my pick.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. So it's like you're mentioning him here in this segment here, but it's just like I don't know how high I feel about these Dallas Cowboys passing options now with that sort of lack of creativity and just, like you said, getting all the juice from the lemon. It's just that's what Kellen Moore was doing. I don't know. I think Mike McCarthy's going to be squeezing once, throwing the lemon away sort of thing. So just I don't see it as much there in the Dallas offense this year.
Okay, first off, that whole metaphor, that was a long walk for a short sip of lemonade. But I will say this. So
I'll take lemonade over lemon water, though.
I did take it. I did take a look at Mike McCarthy's last couple of years as the Packers head coach because his whole time in Dallas, Kellen Moore has been the play caller. Fair concern. Get this. In the last 2 years of him being the Packers head coach, 1 year, Richard Rodgers was second on the team. Richard Rodgers, keep that in mind. Second on the team with 8 touchdowns. I don't know how I don't remember that year, but that was in 2016, I believe, if my memory is serving from a couple of hours ago. The other year, they had a tight end. I have it in my notes. Jimmy Graham, of course. Jimmy Graham finished second on the team in terms of receiving yards. So Mike McCarthy does know how to utilize tight ends. It's just the problem was Green Bay. Take it from me because I went through the last decade, hence why it's getting a little mixed up. I went through the last decade of Green Bay Packers tight ends. My God, did they cycle through them. But I'm sure they had some consistency there. Mike McCarthy does have experience, making the tight end a focal point of the offense and making them an efficient one. Because, like I said, Richard Rodgers, I bet you like half our viewers are like, who the hell is Richard Rodgers? But I promise you that Mike McCarthy, and plus, let's also acknowledge this is not a young Dallas team, right? If he was a smart coach, and he has to be somewhat intelligent, he's been in the NFL for like 15 years. He knows I'm not changing that much up. Now, his play calling may be a little different, but I don't think the style of offense is going to be all that different because Dak Prescott's probably coming up to him like, look, man, you're not the man. I'm the man here. And he is. We are not changing this up. Like, this worked for me. We just went over all of his stats. This worked for me. We're not changing too much up. So I'm not exactly expecting a radically different Dallas offense. And on top of that, I know some of our listeners can go, well, why did Tad cherry pick 2 of the 4 years? Well, first off, yeah, one of those years just sucked. I'm not just there's no defense. That was his last year, by the way. And the other year was, I totally forgot about this until I was doing my research, was when Aaron Rodgers missed like 9 games. You remember that? When I think it was his ankle was bugging him. Brett Hundley was the leading passer for the Packers that year with 1,800 yards. How about that for a throwback, Brett Hundley?
Oh, Brett Hundley.
Right. So that year's a wash is my point. So 2 out of your last 3 years, really, you make the tight end a focal point of your offense. Do I trust him completely? No, I do think he's a moron, but I think he's competent enough to recognize that we are going to take advantage of this young athletic tight end, and that will benefit fantasy players as well.
Okay. I guess that's why you're buying. I may not be as much buying. Like, I'm not going to be there. I'm not pushing my chips.
I'm just like dropping like 3 chips in there. Like, maybe
barely. Yeah. If anything.
Wow, barely 3 chips. Okay.
But yeah, I just don't see it. Like I said, I think there's some semblance of some guys that I may consider there, but just like Ferguson, I think just consider me out. It's over. It's done. I'm not.
I'm not talking him up like Herbert level. I almost said Herbert. Herbert levels where I legitimately do see Herbert having running back 2 potential with absolute ceiling. Maybe he gets up and running back 1. I don't see that happening, but I do see him like running back 2. I see that as a very real possibility. Yes. With Ferguson, I think if you are the type to take 2 tight ends, which I am, because again, it's such a volatile position, never hurts to have insurance policy, especially in the later rounds. It's the second to last round. You got your defense. You're just waiting to see what kicker is out there. I think Ferguson is well worth the flyer to put on your bench.
Okay. If you're going to put it that way, then yeah, maybe I'd consider it. But as a guy to potentially use as like a touchdown dependent option, it's like, that's a little bit too risky for me. So it's like, I don't know if I can trust that.
6 to 8. I'm up in it 6 to 8 just for that.
Wow.
6 to 8.
Do I need to mark the episode 3207?
Let's do it. Okay. I'm at 3210, but whatever.
Okay, close enough. 32-minute mark. We'll leave it there. All right, so I'm going to get to my last guy, Tad. I think you might be pretty excited about this one because I'm going to go to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going to the wide receiver position, and I'm going to go to George Pickens, the wide receiver formerly of the Georgia Bulldogs here.
How dare you bring them up, you son of a bitch. We
slipped it in.
From now on, that team is never mentioned on this podcast again. Where's my TCU hat? Left it in my car. Damn it.
Nice. But Tad, I think you remember George Pickens from last season where it's like, you saw some flashes every so often. You saw that sensational catch. I think it was on Sunday Night Football where he has made like a Odell Beckham
cool
catch on the sidelines.
This was a hot take. I think I had this hot take at the time. Better than the OBJ catch, in my opinion.
It could be. It definitely rivals it for sure. It's like very much like you put them head to head. I think you get 50-50 split, just how amazing that catch was.
Should we do that poll? We'll do that poll on Twitter.
We could. You got to find the videos too. You got to give some people a little bit of a refresher.
I think we might get sued if we do the videos. We'll do a GIF.
No, I think we can find it. We can find it.
If you get our Twitter shut down again, I am going to kill you.
Okay, fine. Find the GIFs, whatever.
Which is a great story for the show. We need to find time to do that on the show, by the way.
I feel like we told the story before, but whatever.
But anyway.
Let's get back to George Pickens here. So, I mean, clearly, Tad, we saw his ability to sort of like, make these flash plays. He sort of became more of a dependent option for Kenny Pickett. You saw him looking his way a little bit more often than not. And clearly, Tad, the Steelers believe that he usurped the secondary receiver role from Chase Claypool because they ended up trading Chase Claypool to the Chicago Bears for a 2nd-round pick. So, I mean, clearly they're like, okay, Pickens is our number 2 guy behind Deontay Johnson. Now, let's bring up Deontay Johnson, because obviously he's the number one option in this receiving offense. But Tad, how many touchdowns? We'll get into that here a little bit here. So Tad, how many touchdowns did Deontay Johnson score last season?
4.
Wow. That's way over based on your
what?
Metric. 0.
Whoa.
He scored 0 touchdowns last season. So that sort of tells you exactly where you sort of question, like, is he the number one option in this offense? I mean, clearly last season, he was the most targeted receiver and he had the most receptions on the season by a wide margin over the secondary receiver in secondary player, I should say, because Pat Freiermuth was sort of second in some of those statistical categories there. But in yards, here's where it gets a lot more interesting, Tad, because in yards, he only had 81 more receiving yards than George Pickens. So, I mean, it's like, even though he's getting more targets, getting more receptions, you think he's, quote unquote, more involved in the offense than a George Pickens or a Pat Freiermuth or any other Pittsburgh receiver player in there. The yards sort of speak a different story as far as, like, you know, George Pickens is able to do more with the catches and the receptions that he's sort of getting right in the offense as far as getting more yardage. He's more that deep threat ability, sort of hitting that home run play that they sort of need every so often, you know, sort of being like the Mike Wallace of old of that offense, where it's like he can sort of just go out there and become a dominant threat to just sort of blow apart the back end of the defense, right? So it's like we see that there with Pickens. And so you look at Johnson now, I think they're going to transition here, Tad, is that Johnson's going to be the chain mover. So he's going to still tally up all those receptions. So he's still a very valuable asset in PPR leagues because he's going to get over 100 receptions. I don't doubt it again because he's going to get a lot of targets there. But like I said, he scored 0 touchdowns last season and he only had 800 receiving yards. I think it was like 800 and change or whatever, but just like that didn't translate to a lot of production in the yardage or clearly the touchdown department. Now you shift over to George Pickens, where he may not have as many receptions then, but he's going to do more with those receptions. He's going to get you more yards. I don't doubt that he could possibly touch 1,000 receiving yards, and he's going to, biggest thing, he's going to score touchdowns for you, which is very valuable, obviously, in fantasy leagues. Like, yes, PPR leagues, Deontay Johnson, very valuable, but receptions only take you so far. You kind of need that extra boost of the scoring touchdowns with the 6 points or 4 points or however you decide to score your receiving touchdowns. You need that extra bonus because, like, even if you just score once, that makes a huge difference compared to having, like, you know, 10 receptions for 60 yards. It may even out over the course of the entire season. So, like I said, Kenny Pickett sort of looked his way a lot more. I think he saw the explosive ability that George Pickens brings. He's more of a dynamic play ability sort of type of guy, yards after catch. I already brought that up there. So also, Kenny Pickett going into his second season now, he's going to become more comfortable in this offense. I think he's going to find more of a rapport with George Pickens and Deontay Johnson, but just George Pickens is the receiver that I want in Pittsburgh.
So a couple of things about what you said. The first thing is that you said that Pickens became one of Pickett's favorite receivers. I'm so glad you used that word because if you actually keep track of the way he developed throughout the years, because look, I think we were both fans of Pickens coming in. By the way, I hate Pickens and Pickett. It always gets so confusing.
Pickett and Pickens.
Yeah, it's the worst. The Pick brothers. But it was funny.
Oh, that's not what you want.
The Pick brothers? What's wrong with that? The Pickman.
Pickman, I'll get you.
There we go. All right, we'll go with Pickman. I like that.
Pick Brothers sort of insinuates that they're getting picked off a lot.
Yeah, that's actually fair. But all right, we'll go with Pickman, which about maybe 30% of the audience will understand. But with Pickens, it was interesting because I noticed throughout the season, you make the occasional flashy play, and you could like see the potential there. And I was like, holy shit, this guy's actually pretty good. And then once the Steelers actually started finding some stability at quarterback, then all of a sudden, that's when George Pickens, like that, it was funny because I was like, oh, this is who I mistook for Herbert. Was because Pickens towards the end of the year, that dude was hot, man. He was like a wide receiver 2 easily in fantasy football with his production. Was he as consistent as a wide receiver 2 as you would want? No, but when he was hot, he put up wide receiver 2 numbers. And so I think that, with more familiarity with Kenny Pickett, with his fellow Pickman, and within the offense itself. And again, this is why it's so important to hold on to a coach. Because if you had the same system or relatively the same system as the Steelers have had for the last 23 years, when was Mike Tomlin hired? 2003? Oh my God, we're nearly 20-year mark. How about that?
I think so. There's somewhere around there.
Yeah. But when you have that consistency of the system and what's expected of you, that familiarity grows so much just within a single offseason. And here's another thing that you brought up was He had 0 touchdowns. Deontay Johnson did. That's not that surprising to me, to be totally honest. That's why I went 4. Honestly thought 4 might be a little high, and clearly it was. The way they utilize Deontay Johnson reminds me a lot, and the way they utilize him and then pair him with George Pickens reminds me, ironically, of a failed experiment with a divisional rival. This is how the Browns saw Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham Jr. working. Was you get Jarvis Landry to be the short yardage guy and then occasionally the guy to stretch the field, while Odell Beckham Jr., like you said, is the big play guy. He's the touchdown guy. He's the flashy guy. Yeah, he may not put up the yardage, but you're damn right he's going to get those touchdown numbers. Meanwhile, Jarvis Landry is like 3 yards, 3 yards, 3 yards. Next thing you know, he has 60 yards with 20 catches. Obviously an exaggeration, but look at some of Jarvis Landry's numbers on the Browns and Dolphins. They're not that far off. So I think that, and as is the case has been for the past 20 years, the Steelers saw what another team tried, but they're finally actually doing it better. So I actually love George Pickens as a sleeper. I'll be fascinated to see where he goes because there are a lot of good, interesting, will Jerry Jeudy go above George Pickens? I don't think he should. I don't trust any of those Denver receivers, but I think the promise of Sean Payton will make people overdraft him and let guys like George Pickens slide. And I trust George Pickens more than I trust any of those Denver receivers. So this could be a very, very good sneaky sleeper to grab.
So if they're the Pikmin, does that make Mike Tomlin Olimar?
Oh, that's a good question. There might be some race issues with that, but yeah, let's run with
it. There is the darker skin.
Art Rooney.
Or Matt Canada, offensive coordinator.
Oh, that's perfect. Because the Pikmin are kind of like, we don't want you around, but you're here anyway. So all right, let's see that. Who was that yelled at in the tunnel? Was that Minka Fitzpatrick? Do you remember that?
I don't remember that.
It was like Matt Canada. I can't remember if it was the playoff or like a game to get them in the playoffs. Matt Canada was going to the locker room at halftime when they were down by a lot, being like, "Yeah, we got this. We got this." I think it was Minka Fitzpatrick yelled like, "We're here because of you."
That seems like something he might have done. Yeah.
So all right. Canada's our Olimar. I like that. He seems dumb enough to blow himself up in a rocket.
Yeah, it's possible.
I'm so sorry, Matt Canada. I don't know why we decided to start picking on you.
But yeah, I think like you were sort of saying, Tad, it's going to be curious to see where Pickens is going to land as far as people's draft boards. I 100% agree with you. I think people are probably going to prioritize a Jerry Jeudy or some of those other, quote unquote, bigger name receivers because of the star power behind a Sean Payton or just like their familiarity with Jerry Jeudy being a number one, during a first round pick, right? Where George Pickens went in the second or third round, if I remember correctly. So it's like, I think just a lot of people don't pay attention to those secondary options that could potentially turn into first wide receiver one options potentially. Whereas like they look at Jerry Jeudy, they automatically think like, oh no, this guy's wide receiver 100%. I'm going to trade him over George Pickens, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, I think it's just that more name recognition sort of a lot of players sort of tend to like drive their draft strategies more of which would lead to George Pickens going a lot later, which means excellent draft value.
And I have a perfect candidate. I'm so glad you said like the perceived number one receiver, because you got to remember the receiver's only as good as the quarterback throwing to him. And I think a guy that's already in, possible spoiler for next episode, because I haven't made my picks yet, but a guy that I'm seeing really hyped up going into next year's draft that I'm not a big believer in, Christian Watson. I think Christian Watson I think he will get drafted ahead of George Pickens in a lot of these drafts, and I like George Pickens a hell of a lot more than I like Christian Watson.
I would agree with that. But 100%, Tad, let's save those takes for this next episode, not next week. Later this week. It's going to be later this week here. These are just a couple of guys that we're sort of buying in here as far as we're getting closer to the 2023 NFL season. Tad, we are 100 days away as of recording from the NFL season. So which that means we're about 90 days away from about fantasy drafts happening, sort of thing. So it's like, it's going to be here sooner than people think. We're here to make sure that you're prepared and ready to go for all your fantasy drafts. We've got you covered with lots of great summer content, fantasy football, off-season content. We may do some wacky stuff like we did with our ultimate draft episode. In case you haven't checked it out, go check out our last episode.
I am putting together I'm putting together the teams this week, by the way.
There you go. We're going to be doing a Madison, but check out that episode. We explained everything that happened as far as what we're doing. We got some graphics related to that episode that will be coming out as well. But just, that was a lot of fun. We would be doing more weird stuff like that as well. And just, guys, the best way you can find out about all the crazy stuff and all the awesome stuff that we're doing on our podcast here, follow us on all our social media handles. You see the Twitter accounts there. You see me at ArborTheSide23. You see Tad at TadTheSide94. See the show handle at the Desai Guys. And, of course, on Instagram at the Desai Guys as well. Subscribe to your podcast, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. You can listen right on the LEFB Network website. If you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to LEFB Network's YouTube channel as well. They got a lot of great content coming in the summer for you guys. We're UCLA and USC football at the college level. Then, of course, we got the Rams and the Chargers for professional football. So they got a lot of great content covering all four of those teams. And guys, I mean, just like I said, we're going to be doing a lot of great stuff for you guys, giving you a lot of great content in the summer. Lots of it fantasy related. We're going to mix in some fun stuff as well. But I mean, guys, to anybody who's interacting with us on social media, we'd love to hear your ideas about what we could do during the summer. To people who are reading our articles that we've written in the past, we hopefully could sprinkle in some articles during the summer as well. People who are listening, people who are watching. I mean, guys, anything and everything that you're doing to support us, we can't thank you enough.
Hey, and if you're like my coworker and you need some off-season, trading advice, if you're in a dynasty league, maybe, and Mur, I'll be interested to hear your quick, 5-second yes or no answer on this. So what I suggested to him was, like I said before, hey, throw in something extra with Tyler Algier. Maybe he'll throw you Javonte Williams since he's hurt. And he goes, how about a third-round pick? Third-round dynasty pick plus Tyler Algier for Javonte Williams. You taking that?
If I'm receiving third round pick in Tyler Algier, I don't know if I'm taking that, but if I'm receiving Javonte Williams at 100%, that's
100%. But that's the key to a good trade. And by the way, if any of my friends are listening to this, please tune off now. But that's the key to a good trade is you lowball them first, and then you kind of gauge interest a little bit. But hey, if you're like him, you're never going to bug us with fantasy advice. Or if you're like me, where you are just preparing for your fantasy draft way too early, hit us up for advice. That's sure. Look, I love fantasy football. As much as I love the draft, I love fantasy football even more. That is my true obsession there. So now that we're slowly, like you said, we got 90 days.
90 days till about the draft start happening, 100 days till the season kicks off.
Okay, so we got about 90 days until school starts up again and fantasy season starts up again. I'm going to choose to focus on the latter. So please help me take my mind off the former and put my mind on the latter and ask us for any advice because we'd be more than happy to give it. We'd be more than happy to have a discussion. If you just want to have a dumb fantasy discussion, hey, what's the best fantasy season of all time? Love to have that discussion with you guys. Hit us up. Let us know. And guys, thank you as always. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you all had a great Memorial Day weekend. And please stay safe, everyone.